Forget lost luggage. Forget delays. Forget bad food. Those are rookie complaints. What you're about to hear comes from a completely different universe, where gravity is optional, the sun's quality is negotiable, and clouds are judged like art. These aren't just grievances, they're masterpieces of madness. This is the story of 101 of the most unhinged, baffling, and hilarious complaints ever filed against an airline. Ready? Let's begin. 1. One flyer was furious his flight arrived early. He argued that landing ahead of schedule had cheated him out of the full flight experience he paid for, and he genuinely demanded the pilot circle the airport to use up the remaining time. 2. A formal complaint was once filed because gravity was apparently left on during the flight. The passenger claimed this made it impossible for him to get comfortable and sleep, as he was genuinely expecting a weightless experience as part of his ticket price. 3. Ever get a window seat just to be disappointed by the view? One traveler demanded a full refund because his transatlantic flight offered, and I am quoting here, a severe lack of interesting landmarks over the ocean. Apparently, endless clouds just weren't cutting it for him. 4. The term in-flight entertainment apparently confused one passenger who thought the headphone jack was for a silent disco. He was deeply upset when he couldn't find the channel with the DJ set that he was promised only in his head. 5. One woman's official grievance was that the flight attendants were simply too attractive. She claimed their good looks were a constant distraction for her husband and suggested the airline adopt a more plain hiring policy to help preserve her marriage. 6. A man's beverage order turned into a formal complaint when his ginger ale wasn't made with freshly grated ginger. It seems he pictured a flight attendant in the galley, meticulously preparing his drink from scratch like some kind of craft cocktail bartender at 30,000 feet. 7. In a stunning display of not understanding how planes work, a passenger complained the engines were too noisy. His helpful suggestion to the crew? Just find the volume knob for the jet engines and turn them down a bit so he could hear his movie better. 8. The sun itself wasn't good enough for one first-class passenger. He filed a complaint stating the light coming through his window was the wrong kind of sun, insisting it was far harsher than the softer, more premium sun he enjoys at his home. 9. The pilot's pre-landing announcement apparently caused one passenger severe emotional distress. The complaint? The captain's voice was so unsettling, it ruined the calming ambiance of his meditation app, leaving him too anxious to enjoy his landing. 10. You just can't make this stuff up. A woman wrote a multi-page letter of complaint because the ice in her gin and tonic was cubed, not spherical. She argued the sharp angles of the ice ruined the drink's aesthetic and demanded a higher standard of frozen water geometry. 11. A passenger attempted to open the emergency exit mid-flight and then had the audacity to complain when the flight attendant stopped him. His official reason? He claimed he'd spotted a UFO outside and felt it was his patriotic duty to get a closer look and document it for science. 12. You'd think the safety briefing is pretty straightforward, right? Well, one person filed a formal complaint that the demonstration wasn't artistically engaging enough. He claimed it lacked dramatic flair and was therefore an ineffective piece of performance art. 13. The humble seatbelt became a source of high-fashion drama for one traveler. He complained that its dull gray color clashed horribly with his designer shirt and demanded the crew provide a catalog of alternative color options for him to choose from. 14. After studying the flight path on his screen, one passenger accused the pilot of being hopelessly lost. His evidence was that the plane was flying in a curve, not a straight line. He demanded the pilot stop taking the scenic route and fly more efficiently. 15. A complaint was once lodged over the complimentary peanuts. They weren't stale, they weren't the wrong brand, they were simply so salty it threatened to mummify his tongue, a level of seasoning he felt was wildly inappropriate at altitude. 16. Someone actually used the expensive in-flight phone to call the cockpit with a very important request. He wanted to ask the pilot if he could dip the wing a little as they flew over Los Angeles so he could get a better look at his cousin's house. 17. Turbulence is annoying, but one passenger took it as a personal attack. She complained that the bumpy air was intentionally messing up her new hairdo and asked if the pilot could please find a smoother patch of sky to drive on. 18. A man complained that the new plane smell was giving him a severe headache. His proposed solution wasn't an aspirin, but for the crew to open the windows for just 5 or 10 minutes to properly air the whole cabin out. 19. The sight of the plane's own wing prompted a frantic push of the call button. A passenger alerted the crew that a large, unidentified metal object appeared to be stuck to the side of the plane and had been following them since takeoff. 20. Apparently, the pilot wasn't connecting with the passengers on a deep enough level. One man complained that during the welcome announcement, the captain failed to compliment his choice of sweater, which he found cold, dismissive, and deeply unprofessional. 21. The simple concept of time zones completely shattered one traveler's reality. Upon landing, he furiously accused the airline of stealing 3 hours of his life without his consent during a flight from New York to California, demanding they be returned. 22. In a complaint that ventured into the supernatural, a man asked a flight attendant to tell the passenger in front of him to stop thinking so loudly. He claimed their aggressive thoughts were disturbing his aura and ruining his ability to meditate. 23. One passenger complained that the cabin crew denied his request for a preventative parachute. He wasn't afraid of the plane crashing. He just wanted the option to bail out in case he disagreed with the quality of the pilot's landing. 24. A passenger traveling with her dog in a carrier complained that the airline failed to provide a dedicated, dog-friendly lavatory. She was genuinely concerned her prized poodle was holding it in and silently judging her for the entire 7-hour flight. 25. The classic chicken or fish option led to a truly philosophical complaint. A man who ordered the chicken later griped that he was never informed of the chicken's name, its life story, or what its hopes and dreams had been before it ended up on his tray. 26. Apparently, not even the beverage cart is safe from scrutiny. A passenger filed a formal complaint alleging that the cart's specific wheel squeak was causing his pet hamster, who was traveling in cargo, extreme emotional trauma and anxiety. 27. A trip to the lavatory resulted in a bizarre grievance about the plane's plumbing. The traveler wasn't upset about the cleanliness. He argued that the flush was insufficiently powerful and lacked the satisfying theatrical finality he felt his contribution deserved. 28. One flight attendant's efficient walk down the aisle was officially logged as a formal disturbance. The passenger next to her claimed her brisk pace created a disruptive personal breeze that repeatedly and intentionally messed up his carefully styled hair. 29. The little illustrated man on the safety card somehow managed to deeply offend one traveler. His complaint? The character's facial expression was unrealistically smug, which he felt set a dangerous and arrogant precedent for surviving a water landing. 30. In a stunning display of main character syndrome, one passenger demanded compensation because the in-flight movie was a film he had already seen. He genuinely believed the airline should have cross-referenced his personal Netflix history to provide a unique playlist. 31. One man's keen eye for graphic design led to an official complaint about the airline's own logo on the wing. He felt the font choice was aesthetically lazy and didn't visually convey the sensation of speed he was promised when he booked the ticket. 32. The complimentary blanket failed to meet one passenger's incredibly high standards. His complaint painstakingly detailed how its synthetic texture was vastly inferior to the fur of his cat, specifically noting it lacked the essential purr-like warmth required for a proper nap. 33. You'd think getting a bag of perfect unbroken pretzels is a good thing, right? Not for one guy. A traveler complained that this perfection deprived him of the simple, satisfying challenge of hunting for and eating all the broken little bits first. 34. The boarding call for Zone 4 was apparently delivered with a shocking lack of urgency. A passenger complained that the gate agent's monotone was so demotivating it made him briefly question his entire life's purpose before finally getting up to board. 35. That familiar ding from the seatbelt sign became a source of musical agony for one passenger. A musician by trade, he wrote a formal letter arguing the tone was a B-flat, a note he described as inherently pessimistic and a terrible way to announce lavatory freedom. 36. After hearing the captain introduce his co-pilot, one passenger immediately suspected a deep-seated conspiracy. He filed a report on potential nepotism in the cockpit, simply because both pilots had a similar accent, which to him was far too unlikely to be a coincidence. 37. Stepping off a plane into a tropical paradise was, for one man, a horrifying experience. He lodged a complaint that the airline failed to pre-warm the jet bridge, forcing him into a shockingly abrupt temperature change rather than a gentle, curated transition. 38. A complaint was once filed against a fellow passenger for, and I'm not making this up, aggressive and overly rhythmic blinking. The man claimed the steady, metronome-like pattern was an attempt at hypnosis designed to steal his vacation ideas. 39. The simple act of printing a boarding pass led to a full-blown crisis at the check-in desk. A passenger demanded a reprint because his barcode, when he squinted at it just right, looked like a sad face, and he refused to start his holiday on such a negative omen. 40. And for our last one in this batch, a complaint that took aim at the laws of physics. A traveler argued it was grossly unfair that passengers on the right side of the plane got to experience the sunset first, demanding the pilot turn around to ensure equal viewing opportunities. 41. The captain's welcome announcement was apparently not intimate enough for one traveler. His official complaint stated the pilot missed the opportunity to share a tender childhood memory, which he felt was essential for building emotional trust with the cabin. 42. The crispness of a pre-packaged salad became the basis for a formal grievance. A passenger complained the lettuce was offensively crunchy, and the sound was interfering with his ability to listen to his quiet jazz playlist, demanding a softer vegetable option be made available. 43. One man refused to board and then filed a complaint because the plane at the gate was white. He insisted he had booked a ticket on a blue plane, as depicted on the website, and this last-minute color swap was a clear case of bait-and-switch advertising. 44. A flight attendant had to mediate a bizarre dispute after a woman complained her seatmate was breathing in the wrong key. She insisted his inhalations were clashing with the ambient hum of the engines, creating a deeply unsettling and dissonant sonic environment. 45. The humble fold-down tray table was the source of one passenger's fury. He complained it was horribly designed for a proper game of chess, claiming the cup holder blocked key strategic squares and demanding a full-sized inlaid wood chessboard be installed for his convenience. 46. Staring out the window led to a truly baffling complaint from one man. He became deeply concerned that the clouds below were forming judgmental shapes, which he claimed were mocking his life choices, and demanded the pilot find more neutral skies. 47. During a patch of rough weather, a passenger pressed the call button with an urgent request. He wanted the flight attendant to ask the pilot if he could please just fly above the rain, not due to turbulence, but because the sound of raindrops was making him feel gloomy. 48. One traveler's complaint wasn't about lost luggage, but about the baggage carousel itself. He argued its counterclockwise rotation was psychologically negative and was creating a bad energy vortex in the arrivals hall, demanding it be reversed immediately. 49. The pattern on the cabin carpet was enough to ruin one woman's entire trip. She complained its abstract swirls were far too chaotic and were subliminally suggesting her vacation would be disorganized. She wanted a full refund for the preemptive emotional damage. 50. A man holding a ticket for seat 13A caused a scene at the gate. His reason wasn't superstition, but his claim that the numbers 1 and 3 were mathematically incompatible with his personal numerology, and sitting there would severely disrupt his karma. 51. After watching a spy movie on his laptop, one passenger became convinced an air marshal was on the flight. He later filed a complaint that the marshal wasn't being subtle enough, claiming he could totally spot him, and his amateur spycraft was ruining the immersion. 52. The bright yellow life vest demonstrated during the safety briefing was the subject of a fashion-based complaint. A passenger argued the color was hideous and deeply unflattering, and would clash horribly with his skin tone in any potential emergency water landing photos. 53. Upon landing in Las Vegas, a passenger immediately complained to the crew. Her grievance? She was disappointed the neon lights didn't spell out a personal welcome message for her, calling it a missed opportunity for true luxury. 54. A complaint was once lodged that the recycled cabin air tasted stale. The passenger seriously suggested the airline install an air sommelier on every flight to curate a selection of vintage airs, perhaps a crisp 2023 mountain blend for the discerning traveler. 55. After shaking the captain's hand while boarding, one woman filed a formal grievance. She claimed his hands were clearly not a pilot's hands and lacked the delicate yet firm grip she had envisioned. She spent the entire flight questioning his credentials based purely on his manicure. 56. A passenger in business class was deeply offended by the reading material of the person next to him. His complaint stated the man's choice of a lowbrow, mass-market thriller was actively lowering the intellectual atmosphere of the entire premium cabin. 57. One traveler's complaint focused on the lack of narrative arc in the flight path. After looking at the map, she argued the journey was dramatically unsatisfying, lacking a clear beginning, middle, and climactic end. She suggested a more story-driven route next time. 58. The small, complimentary bar of soap in the lavatory became the focus of a truly bizarre grievance. A passenger complained it was emotionally cold and unresponsive to his needs, unlike his soap at home, which he claimed understood him on a deeper level. 59. After a flight from Boston, a man furiously accused the airline of false advertising. The plane didn't have a thick, charming Boston accent as he had expected, and he felt the pilot's generic, accentless voice was a major letdown. 60. A complaint was filed because the moon, visible from the plane window, appeared to be the exact same moon the passenger had seen from his backyard just last week. He was deeply disappointed that the airline hadn't arranged for a different, more exotic moon for his trip. 61. The call button sound was the source of one person's existential crisis. They complained that its cheerful chime was too flippant for potentially serious requests, arguing that there should be a separate, more somber button for existential dread or a beverage. 62. A woman demanded a flight change after looking up her pilot's name on social media pre-flight. Her reason? His profile picture showed him at a barbecue, and she refused to entrust her life to a man who so clearly overcooked his sausages. 63. The view of the Earth's curvature from 35,000 feet prompted a formal complaint. A passenger argued that the visible curve was subtle and underwhelming, and that for the price he paid, he expected a more pronounced and dramatic bend in the horizon. 64. A man complained that the flight attendant wishing him a good morning at 11:30 a.m. was chronologically inaccurate. He insisted it warranted an official apology for temporal misconduct and suggested staff carry synchronized watches. 65. The little packet of sugar for his coffee caused a major incident for one passenger. He complained that the act of tearing it open was far too aggressive and disrupted the zen-like state he was trying to achieve before his important business meeting. 66. A passenger on a flight to Italy complained that the crew wasn't Italian enough. He was outraged that none of them spoke with exaggerated hand gestures or offered him unsolicited life advice, which he considered a core part of the authentic Italian experience. 67. One man's complaint centered on the airplane's wings. He claimed they were too pointy and that their aggressive, angular design was sending a hostile message to the clouds, potentially provoking bad weather out of pure spite. 68. A traveler filed a grievance because the pilot didn't share the winning lottery numbers during his final announcement. He reasoned that being in the sky gave the pilot a closer connection to the cosmos, and he was selfishly withholding this valuable information. 69. The fasten seatbelt sign was apparently too bossy for one passenger. He didn't object to the rule itself, but to the sign's demanding, non-negotiable tone. He suggested a gentler, more suggestive message like, perhaps consider buckling up. 70. One woman's complaint was that the clouds outside her window were poorly arranged and lacked artistic composition. She seriously suggested the pilot take a detour to find a more aesthetically pleasing cloud formation for her to photograph for her social media. 71. A flight's water supply became the center of a bizarre conspiracy theory. A passenger complained that the water used for his tea was left-handed water, which he claimed spun in the wrong direction when flushed, and was fundamentally incompatible with his right-handed digestive system. 72. The captain's name, Captain Rogers, was the sole reason for one passenger's panic. He filed a complaint stating the name was far too generic for a pilot and sounded like a default character name in a flight simulator, which made him question if the entire flight was real. 73. One traveler took issue with the airport code displayed on the departure screen. He complained that LAX was a lazy and uninspired abbreviation for Los Angeles, and that the three-letter designation lacked the poetic grandeur the city deserved. 74. The in-flight magazine was the subject of a very specific complaint. A passenger was furious that the crossword puzzle was too easy, claiming it was an insult to his intelligence and deprived him of a worthy mental challenge for the duration of the flight. 75. A man complained that the plane's shadow, visible on the ground during landing, was poorly defined. He claimed its blurry edges were mocking his need for crisp precision and demanded a sharper silhouette on future flights. 76. After ordering a tomato juice, a passenger became irate and filed a complaint. The reason? The flight attendant failed to ask him if he wanted it spicy or mild, a lapse in service he considered a personal and culinary betrayal of the highest order. 77. A woman complained that the passenger in front of her had a very annoying back of the head. She couldn't articulate why, just that its shape was unsettling and ruined her view, demanding to be moved to a seat with a more pleasant head in front of her. 78. One traveler's grievance was with the fundamental principles of aviation. He complained that the wings were flapping far too slowly to possibly generate enough lift, and he spent the entire flight convinced they were only staying in the air due to some kind of trick. 79. The small hole in the airplane window was the source of a formal complaint. The passenger wasn't worried about depressurization. He was annoyed that the hole whistled slightly off-key and was clashing with the music he was listening to on his headphones. 80. A man demanded a refund because the pilot had a mustache. He claimed mustaches were inherently untrustworthy and that he couldn't relax for the entire flight, picturing the pilot twirling it while making nefarious plans. 81. The choice of font on the exit signs was needlessly aggressive, according to one passenger's official complaint. He argued the sharp sans serif letters were creating a subconscious sense of panic and suggested a calmer, more script-like font for emergencies. 82. A passenger complained that the airline's claim of flying at the speed of sound was false advertising. He knew this because he could still hear the person snoring next to him, proving they were clearly traveling slower than sound itself. 83. The snack cart offering was a source of deep philosophical conflict for one woman. She complained that having to choose between sweet or salty snacks created unnecessary existential pressure, and that the airline should simply make the decision for her. 84. A man filed a formal complaint because the flight attendant walking down the aisle made direct and prolonged eye contact with him. He wasn't flattered. He was convinced she was trying to read his thoughts and steal his business secrets. 85. Upon landing, a passenger was outraged that the captain thanked them for flying with this airline. He argued that since he was merely sitting and the plane was doing all the work, the thanks were misdirected and factually inaccurate. 86. The coffee served on one flight wasn't too hot or too cold. It was, according to the passenger, lacking ambition. His formal complaint stated the beverage had a defeatist attitude and didn't seem like it was trying its best to be a truly great coffee. 87. A pilot's choice of neckwear was apparently grounds for a full investigation. One traveler complained the tie's dizzying paisley pattern was far too chaotic for a man in control of a multi-ton aircraft, suggesting it revealed a dangerously unpredictable personality. 88. The poor gentleman sitting in seat 14B became the subject of a formal grievance, not for snoring or taking up space, but for looking too much like the complainant's ex-brother-in-law, Dave, which brought up a lot of bad memories and ruined the flight. 89. For one passenger, the sound of the landing gear deploying was painfully unceremonious. He wrote a letter suggesting the airline replace the generic clunking sound with a majestic, fanfare-like orchestral piece to properly celebrate the beginning of the descent. 90. The safety briefing's use of the word vest instead of life jacket deeply troubled one woman. Her official complaint argued that vest implied a fashion choice and gravely undersold the seriousness of a potential water landing. 91. A man became irate that his seat didn't have an eject button. He wasn't afraid of flying. He just felt that for the price of a first-class ticket, he should have the ultimate opt-out feature in case the in-flight conversation with his neighbor became boring. 92. In a shocking misunderstanding of geography, a passenger on a domestic flight from Denver to Salt Lake City complained that the pilot had failed to point out the pyramids as they flew over them. 93. One traveler's complaint was that the plane's windows were too clean. He argued the lack of smudges and dirt removed the romantic, well-traveled feeling of the journey and made the whole experience feel sterile and inauthentic. 94. A woman's hot towel service in business class ended in a formal complaint. The towel, she claimed, was clearly folded with a negative attitude, and she could feel the passive-aggressive energy woven into its very fibers. 95. The iconic roar of the jet engines was a source of major disappointment for one passenger. He complained it sounded nothing like it does in the movies and accused the airline of using a cheaper, less impressive engine sound for his particular flight. 96. Upon receiving his meal, a man complained that his chicken was looking at him funny. He insisted its posture on the plate was judgmental, and it was making him too self-conscious to eat it, demanding it be replaced with a more respectful-looking piece of chicken. 97. A passenger accused the flight attendant of thought plagiarism. She claimed she was just about to ask for a pillow when the attendant offered her one, thus stealing her original idea and robbing her of the satisfaction of asking for it herself. 98. The emergency exit row signage was the target of one complaint. The passenger argued the universal Running Man icon was needlessly panicked and suggested it be replaced with a picture of a man casually strolling towards the exit with a cocktail. 99. A man filed a formal complaint because his request to have the cabin lights dimmed for a surprise seance to contact his great-aunt Mildred was denied by the crew, citing their shocking lack of spiritual open-mindedness. 100. One passenger felt her personal space was being violated by the sky itself. She complained that the sky outside her window was too blue and that its overwhelmingly cheerful demeanor was putting unfair pressure on her to be happy. 101. And finally, a passenger complained that the airline had no official policy for her emotional support plant. She was genuinely concerned that the lack of direct sunlight in the cabin was disrupting its photosynthesis schedule and demanded the pilot alter their course to chase the sun. So there you have it, 101 reasons to wonder how some people even manage to leave the house, let alone board a plane. But let's get serious for a second. The biggest crime in air travel: the person in front of you slams their seat back, crushing your knees. Be honest, is a little accidental knee-nudging self-defense? Or just petty, childish revenge? No diplomacy here. Tell me what kind of passenger you really are in the comments. And if you enjoyed the ride, go ahead, sentence that like button and subscribe for more.